I wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name, check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain, I ingest, I retain, assess and I change, possessed by the thought I'll be free one day from society's restraints, money, clout and fame, mud, disease, a plague, we all love to hate, have to play the game, have to make a name, all our insecurities are on display. This is war with the enemy, think that it was meant to be, living in a time where disease is on every screen, I won't let them fester me, I know most are festering, negativity is a plague for the mentally weak, no mercy, all I got is working, never stop searching, never quench the thirsty, I'm toxic and psychotic, with this logic, you can't stop it, it's been chronic, since I was a boy, so neurotic and chaotic,
built to last with the webs I'm weaving, I could change the past with all I'm achieving, got my foot on gas, never stop competing, if you break like glass, then this life's gonna eat 'em, make mistakes real fast, then you learn how to beat 'em, if you take off the cast, you can see all the healing, if the pain's in the past, move on from the grave and put your foot on the gas, no, never stop competing, yeah.
I've been doing this, I'm on it, I just wanna be iconic, sipping on a gin and tonic, got me going off when I'm on this topic, yeah. If I ever play, I want it, you know that I'm always honest, stay away from those who are toxic, keep them out your face, no way, you don't want it, yeah. Don't try to drain my energy, the enemy is everything, it's mentally, unhealthily, spreading like a rare disease, but I won't let it get to me, I don't need your therapy, I can leave a legacy of leading by intensity, come on, we can fight this, freedom is priceless, spread just like a virus, living in a crisis, do you feel courageous, do you seek greatness, trust me you can take it, go on and take your aim, yeah.
Built to last with the webs I'm weaving, I could change the past with all I'm achieving, got my foot on gas, never stop competing, if you break like glass, then this life's gonna eat 'em, make mistakes real fast, then you learn how to beat 'em, if you take off the cast, you can see all the healing, if the pain's in the past, move on from the grave and put your foot on the gas, no, never stop competing, yeah.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, yeah.
Turn on your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective in the data and the soul. The hive mind's getting louder, finding a voice in control.
When we get to the FBI, we don't know who did the work. You heard that any of that information is redacted. We don't know who did the work. It's a giant secret. We know that by the time the FBI gets involved, the profile, the text file, that's a snip to use to try to identify somebody is more than twice as big when it gets to the FBI from Othram. We don't know how.
I've got an itch I can't scratch, I'm missing a piece that completes a whole part of me, an open wound scar to see. Everybody come here, gather round, welcome to the freak show, the best in town.
Good morning, Hive. Happy Saturday. I hope everybody had a fun and relaxing Friday night. or a rowdy Friday night, whatever you were trying to do. I hope that you were able to do so. And if you tuned into the live last night, man, that was one for the books. It's the first time that my computer has ever shut down in the middle of a live, either by coincidence or my FBI agent said, "All right, Bertie, that's enough. Time to shut you down." So I'm going to post just the audio clip of that 911 call. I was going to try to do a quick cut, but I figured the live is probably, you got to see the entire thing. So I will post just the 911 enhanced audio. And then in the description, I will tell you what filters are all applied. So you can go ahead and recreate it yourself. With that being said, I'm very excited today. We have George Webb backstage, an OG investigative journalist who has gone deep on many things and has mapped out all of the players, connected all of the dots. So to say that I'm excited to talk to him is an understatement. It's an honor to have George here in the Hive, and I'm excited to chat with him. I'm going to say what's up to everybody real quick and then bring George on up. It was wild last night. I saw the email and I just clicked through a couple of them. They look great. The Hive's going to have some dope ass merch. I can tell you that much. Appreciate that. Chantilly Lace with the resting bitch face. It was wild. Discord Dawn. How are you doing this morning? What's up, Rayanne? Sharon says, welcome, George Webb. Julie's saying, George Webb in the Hive. I agree. Dark Ritual Coffee Roasters. It's one of the coolest coffee shop names. And he says, so glad you're safe. Me too. Me too. I will check it out, Carrie. Thank you so much. What's going on, Amy Lou Who? Jim Harrison. UK Karen, always good to see you. How are you doing, Carrie? Coffee Field, 1425. Mrs. Birdie says, everybody was worried Birdie was getting swatted. Couldn't have been further from the truth. We were yelling at the computer. Oh, man, I got to get like a second camera that has like a bird's eye view so that if that ever happens, that one should run on like a separate connection so you guys can see the crash outs. What's going on, Halo Art? How are you doing, Tinkerbell? Kimberly, good to see you. Sarah Sushi, love the UK Hive. Canadian friend tuning in. Kimberly, good to see you. Thank you for being a part of the Hive. Lily says, I was yelling at my TV because the internet was slow and missed half the live. That's funny. Tegan's tuning in from the Hive down under. Tinkerbell's buzzing. Thank you, Charity, for reposting the stream. Looks like we are cross-streaming today. That's awesome. Getting the word of the Hive out. Good morning, Lydia. I'm doing well, Robin. Good to see you. Poetic Justice. Criminal Minds. I have not. I don't know where that email went. I have it literally still on. I have my to-do list. It's still on my to-do list to send you that. HVAC Works. What up? Somebody from London tuning in. What's up, Ellie? Lynn, good to see you. Slovenia. Love it. Love it. All right, Hive. Well, buckle up because as you can see, today's theme, we're going to be talking about Palantir, amongst other things, starting at a 40,000 foot view. I know George has some things that he wants to dive into, which I am extremely interested in hearing what that will be. As you know, the Hive Mind, if this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. This is a contrarian thinking live stream. So if you get offended when people think past the basic normie simp headlines and you get offended or rattled on behalf of others, this is not your stream. However, if you like to read the footnotes, look into things, wrap your head around what could be possible, you have found your people, and welcome to the Hive. So we got George Webb backstage. When George Webb calls bullshit, it's not just a hot take. I can tell you that much. The journalist, he's connected dots between shipping containers, black budget contractors, software that decides who lives and dies in modern warfare. It's unbelievable what this guy has uncovered. I'm honored to have him here in the Hive, and I'm going to go ahead and bring him on up right now. George, what's going on, brother?
Hey, Bertie, longtime fan, first time guest.
I love it, man. I love it. Dude, so I know that you and I have kind of been communicating back and forth via live stream chats and things like that. But I have been a fan of your work, and I've seen your videos over the course of the last few years. What was it that made you start calling out the bullshit back in the day? Just to give everybody a little bit of a background if they're not familiar with your work, what got you into just exposing all of the corruption and the money and the connections behind the scenes that we as the public are apparently not privy to?
Well, I was minding my own business. Really, literally, I was in high tech. I was making good money. Don't go into citizen journalism if you want to make a lot of money. But doing really great. And I was working with a company called Network Associates, and we bought two companies. We bought a company called PGP, which is a privacy company, and we bought another company, which is these 12 Russians from Moscow. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought they were going to write antivirus software. I was working for it. One of the companies was McAfee. Turned out the Russians weren't writing antivirus. They were actually planning virus for the next quarter to juice the next quarter's sales. Very unethical, extremely unethical. I ended up leaving the company, but that guy's name was Dmitry Alperovich, and I was there for the purchase of these companies, and I saw him port the pretty good privacy software, which is encryption software.
Mm-hmm.
And In-Q-Tel was the CIA funding arm, and they ported it to BlackBerry. And then over the next since 1999 on, they used it for all kinds of things: overthrows, 9/11, Libya, Syria, Sudan, Yemen, the Iran nuclear deal, the overthrows in Ukraine. So I was right there. And so when I saw in 2016 the guy who was investigating the supposed DNC hack, no, it wasn't a hack. It was a hoax. Wow. It was Dmitry Alperovich. And I said, you got the fox guard in the chicken coop here. Are you kidding? This is the guy who's been doing this shit for 20 years. So that's how I got started. I had no desire whatsoever to get into this.
So like prior to, because I'm assuming that it sounds like it was the mid 90s when that happened.
This was late 90s, 99 when I was at Network Associates. And then we bought the company in about or maybe 99 in 2000. Okay. And then I can't even remember, Cryptoland, I think it was called. And then I didn't really have any intersection with Dmitry Alperovich for another 16 years until I saw he was the lead investigator for the DNC hack. I couldn't believe it.
That's crazy. And so with you being in tech and having a background in that, was there ever an aspect of kind of the way that your brain worked, or before you uncovered that, did you ever see things happen in the media that your bullshit meter went off? Have you always kind of been a little bit of a tinfoil hat wearer, contrarian thinker?
Well, I mean, I don't know, packets. I mean, I was always a packet analyst, so packets tell the truth. You know, it's not like, like the Trump hack with the Alpha Bank with the hotel. We immediately looked at the packets and saw every 10th packet was going to Spectrum Health, which is Blackwater Health. That's the company that Eric Blackwater with Eric Prince and Nancy DeVos have in Grand Rapids. We call that a man-in-the-middle attack, where you're trying to make it look like somebody's talking to the Russians. So you put one endpoint in Trump Hotel and you put the other one at Alpha Bank, and then but you need to have a point in the middle to launch the attack, and it was launched from Spectrum Health. We were looking right at the packets. So I don't know if that's conspiracy theory or not, but when that came out in October, is the big October surprise for Trump in the first time around, we called it out and said, no, this was launched from Spectrum Health. Here's the IP address, so.
Dude, see, and part of me thinks that the term conspiracy gets thrown around as a way to obviously discredit what's being said, right? So you go back to the JFK times when the term was literally created by a culmination of the FBI and the CIA for, well, if we can't discredit what they're saying, let's call them a conspiracy theorist and then discredit the person. And it still holds true today. And what I would say is this: if you think that a conspiracy is rich, powerful, and influential people saying one thing to the public, but then behind the scenes and behind closed doors, they're, shaking hands and making deals. Well, then, yeah, I guess we can call it a conspiracy, but that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And we don't get to see it. We just have to read the headlines, try to dive into it ourselves. But it's way easier to just slap that label on it. And then people's minds, they just go blank and they can't wrap their head around the tech, the connections, the influence that very powerful people are involved in this. There is nefarious intentions. And I'll finish that by saying a lot of times what I've found just personally with conversations that I've had is when you're a good person, you always assume that other people are good people and that there's not a nefarious intent behind their actions. It would be like spitting into a tube for the 23andMe. You're like, oh, this is so fun. I'm going to see my heritage. I'm going to see, my ancestry, ancestral tree. But you don't know that there's somebody in China or some other country that's literally trying to make a bioweapon, perhaps with everyone's genetic DNA. And it sounds crazy, but unless you can think in that manner, you're going to have you're going to have it pulled right over your head every time, and they're going to get you because you're never going to see it coming.
Yeah, and everybody has this kind of red pill moment when they realize that's not the way the world is. Right. Where you go, oh shit. Like when I saw it, I knew Dimitri was a bad guy at Network Associates, but until I was a Bernie supporter. I was mad that Bernie got all his money stolen from by Hillary. I voted for Barack Obama twice. I know people are going to laugh at me, but that just changed my whole world. That was my red pill moment. It's like, what the hell is Dimitri doing there running this thing? He's the biggest criminal there is. So, it's same with Palantir. If you bought CrowdStrike, state sponsored, you did well, you're rich. If you bought Palantir, you're rich. So, there's too much money involved for there not to be some people that choose that criminal path.
Yeah. And before we start to really dive into the meat and the bones, I know that you kind of wanted to mention your research group's methodology as far as their means, the motives, some opportunities coming up, what's going on currently. If you want to explain that a little bit, feel free.
Sure. You've heard this all in the crime movies and the crime shows where they get the crime board out there, that big whiteboard that they use for all the case solving. And that's what we started that. It was 8 years ago when I said, okay, well, let's do this thing then, and we're going to take, this is again, where it's not conspiracy theory. We go through exactly the same way the FBI or a local police or any kind of investigative agency. And so you put means and motive and opportunity up there on the whiteboard, and then you just start putting down all the people who have a motive, right? And who have the means to do it. If you don't have both of those, you don't have a person who could have committed your crime. And if they don't have opportunity, they don't commit the crime. So that's very simple. And then you build what you call a theory of the case. Once you go through, put as much as you can on the whiteboard and then eliminate everybody that has an alibi. And then you finally develop a theory of the case that puts means, motive, and opportunity together. That was I wasn't involved in this case until Brian Koberger had already pled guilty.
Right.
But then reviewing your kind of information, and I used some power tools to sum it up.
Yeah.
Also Pavarotti, I used some power tools to sum up what you guys did, but I just vacuumed up what you guys did, distilled it out into means, motive, opportunity, and theory of the case. And it's very simple. It's a very simple case at that point, and then you turn it around and then look at how it ended up. It was just, it's a comedy.
It is a comedy. Mm-hmm. It is a comedy. And I just want to say too, that when you look at the means, the motive, and the opportunity, I'm curious, looking at the Idaho 4 case, can you lay out what you and your team have found as far as means, motive, opportunity?
Well, this one I've vacuumed up with a power tool, an AI power tool from Pavarotti. But basically, there's this guy, Jesse James Bailey, who runs Aryan Knights. I knew about the Aryan Nation and the FBI kind of putting them in business 40 years ago, Ruby Ridge and all these other things. So I knew that how the drug running was running in the Northwest. I had that prior knowledge. But Pavarotti, I think you covered this too. Hey, this guy Bailey got one of his, teams, these Fetty bros got busted on this xanacronodal, dropping the dime on them, and they were about ready to get 24 guys set up, or sent to prison, and they did a hit, and they got all three of the people who had, knowledge and information to be a witness against them, and they killed them all. They couldn't get to the individuals themselves because they're under protection, but they got to all their closest loved. And it was pretty simple. There was the 2013 Elantra that Bailey had, and this guy Burroughs was in the Queen Road apartments looking down, casing the joint out a month before, maybe before that. And that's stalking behavior. And then it seems like there's 2 weapons involved and 4 people and a gun and a knife. I mean, it just seemed like a classic drug hit. And then the other method we use is called mosaic, which is more you just kind of take everything in as one big, ball of information, and then you kind of see what drains out of the bottom. And Aryan Nights just kept draining out. Everybody had an Aryan Night connection. There's not one person in this case that's not somehow related to the Aryan Nights. So it looks pretty clearly like it's a drug deal. It's a revenge motive. And the people who are the henchmen, and then I spent a month in Coeur d'Alene and talked to a lot of people who are close to the family, and everything I found was, it reinforced that initial theory.
Well, that's how I wanted to make sure that we talk about how it is that I'm going to use the term stumbled into this case, because you were on the ground for something else. I remember watching one of your videos and you were reporting on the scene, and you just happened to be there when the Idaho firefighting, or the sniper was there rather. And what were you there for prior? I forgot. And then that happened. You're like, oh shit, wait, they're saying that they're pinned down and all this stuff. And it's like, they're right there. Like, that's not what's happening. Right.
Well, there was a journalist named Casey Whalen, and he thought that Antifa was going to do something in Coeur d'Alene. I thought Antifa was going to do something else for the No King.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep.
So there was going to be a false flag, and I'm down in Richland by the plutonium plant. I'm thinking they're going to go after that. And then we came up to Fairchild Air Force Base, maybe try to get in and out of the gates at the Strategic Air Command base there at Fairchild. And then I heard this thing. It turned out Casey was right. And so I raced over to get to the parking lot, and I'm standing near the sniper copter, and I'm saying, oh, there's 6 people, 5 people shooting, 4 people shooting. We're taking all this gunfire, and I'm standing right next to the sniper copter guy, and he's not up in the air, and none of the birds are in the air. And I said, something's wrong here.
Unbelievable.
But anyway, to get into this case, I had a guy who was one of our investigators. He's here on another investigation here, where I'm at now, in Michigan. And he said, I call him Data Dave. He's another one of these guys who's an super smart engineering guys. I see you have a lot of people like that, gals and guys, in your audience. Mm-hmm. And he said, basically, there's this guy named Cy Ray who uses this micro triangulation because he's 5G, can do much smaller geolocation. And Kohlberger's car isn't anywhere near it's close, but it's not at the site. So he's innocent. And this is Cy Ray guy, right, is supposedly being used by the prosecution in all these other cases. So he's got total credibility. And so that's where he got me involved in the case. And I said, oh, you've got something that is an alibi? Oh, I want to know about that. And that's when I started getting interested.
Yeah. Well, and if we were to start from the sniper incident and kind of back into the rest of the case, it takes about an hour of digging between the court case summary and court documents to think to yourself, is this related? Are they taking somebody out? Because you look at the sheriff and they had a sealed, I forget the exact legal document term, but they had a sealed something with like a warrant or a witness. And ultimately what that means is that the sheriff delivered some sort of paperwork to somebody that was either making them come forward as a witness or they were going to have to testify. That was a day or two before. And it's like, wow. And then you look at who's involved in it. One of the things that absolutely got me addicted to watching you talk about this was you're one of the only people that I've heard mention the kid that was thrown off the bridge in the midst of that. Do you want to talk about that quick too? Because that's an aspect that not many people know. They called it a suicide, but I agree with you. I don't think it was.
Right. Well, so the Canfield fire, for people not interested, most people think of it as 2 firefighters being shot. They were sort of sitting in this truck, and this kid who's kind of like a brawny boy, young 20-year-old, shoots them, enfilade, so the bullets go through both of them. Both of them die simultaneously, and that's the story everybody has. And it's a story about, hey, our firefighters are taking shots from crazies, right?
Mhm.
But what was on either end of that kind of high drama was this police lieutenant in Post Falls, Brian Harrison, his wife being abducted and going missing. They say she committed suicide, but she ends up missing for 2 days. Her whole family is putting out APBs and go send me appeals to try to find her. So that doesn't sound like it's a family fight. It sounds like they don't know what happened to her. And she is found dead on the other side of Canfield Mountain the next day. So
It's unbelievable.
yeah, it's sort of like on the escape route. If there was a second shooter and he had a motorcycle in the back of a truck or something and took off over those hills, he would have, once he was done with the GM Acadia she was driving, takes the motorcycle out and then kills her. She's found shot in the head. That's most women, kind of poison themselves, and they tend to not go too far away from their kids. They tend to leave a note, all these things. So anyway, that was the first one, Serena Harrison. And then the one right before the last, there was 3 press conferences that day at 9:30. They say they're throwing this Tyler kid off the I-90 bridge. Well, maybe somebody just decides to commit suicide right before the last press conference. But again, it's one of those things you want to look into. He's about the age of a U of I student. He's 20 years old. He's working with autistic kids. A lot of times these guys target an autistic kid like us or somebody on the spectrum like Koberger. So that was interesting to me. And I just thought it was interesting. It reminded me of Lee Harvey Oswald, which is an hour after the Kennedy assassination, or 2 hours, they said, well, Oswald acted alone.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know that?
Exactly.
I want to look into it more. There was a safe house for Aryan Knights there with Tim Remington and the Altar Church, so not a safe house, but they had infiltrated this safe house. It was right next to the I-90 bridge. I just want to ask more questions.
Well, and the initial reports, this was very odd too, was actually, I believe it was an EMS worker or a firefighter that was FOIA-ing the hell out of the logs of who was some of the first responders on scene at the 1122 King Road residence. There's a lot of speculation that person had uncovered, oh shit, Brian wasn't there. There's some suspect activity going on with these body cams, because I believe that's what they had FOIA'd. And to your point about Lee Harvey Oswald, it's narrative seeding. They're planting the seed of the narrative. They did the same thing on 9/11 when right away CNN got that guy that's like, oh, they probably failed because of structural integrity and the heat of the, like, how does some random bystander within an hour know that? And the other thing too, you talked about like suicide with women, that most times they're not shooting themselves. They'll do poison or they'll do something. Usually it's not far from home. That just made the Brian Laundrie case pop into my head, where one of the things that also, when it comes to men, is if you do kill yourself, most times you use your dominant hand. His head wound was on his non-dominant side, which to me is very like, okay, that's odd, right? Like using your non-dominant hand for anything, yet alone pulling a trigger and making sure that if you're trying to accomplish suicide, it's going to be accurate. I don't know. So you bring up very, very, very good points. And I got to ask you, in what, how could I phrase it? Because I want to ask you, like, I don't think you think Brian Koberger is guilty by any means, but in what capacity is Brian involved in this? And that's why I have this theme of like Palantir, because I do wonder sometimes if Palantir used this opportunity to do a test run with, what would our system find as a suspect? And then can we use our resources in the media to continue to push this suspect? And will the people believe it? Although there's no motive, there's no weapon, there's no connection. But if we can continue to push it via IgG, via geofence warrants, via our other technology, will they buy it?
Well, Palantir, I mean, if you look at the people behind Palantir, especially Alex Karp that you got up here, you can see that there is this constant problem solution being delivered, and it's always this high impact, high emotional, high limbic response type of thing where, Travis Decker is killing his 3 kids and he's on the loose, right?
Remind me to ask you about Decker too.
Yeah. And so you're not going to mention that when somebody starts shooting cops, or firemen. The sheriff never mentioned that during Canfield 4. It's like, we got a mass murder on the loose. He's got a Clark Fork Outfitters hat on. That's about 30 miles away. That's where the missing woman is seen. I just, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes. So that's rephrase your question, because I kind of got off on Travis Decker.
In what capacity do you think Brian Kohberger is involved in this case? Do you think that he has any involvement, or do you think that this is some sort of, I'm using Palantir as an example, but do you think this is some sort of AI predictive criminal policing study, which, as we know, WSU, the same criminology department Brian Kohberger was in, was getting funding from the NIJ, or the research arm of the DOJ, for exactly that, in a non-clinical setting in emerging adults? So my question is, if somebody does not have a clear motive, if somebody does, you can't tie him to the scene, you have a speck of DNA that they confirmed from a Q-tip fucking 2,000 miles away in his trash, and, there's no connection to the victims, what capacity is Brian involved in?
Well, I definitely think he had a problem with meth, and I do think he was helping his friend Kopaka because he couldn't drive, get meth. But that's a different crime.
It is, yeah.
Gas, I just haven't been there a month. Gas is way cheaper in Idaho than it is in Washington. If you drive 5 miles, it's like $1 cheaper, sometimes more. So the guy's driving to the Target and filling up, that, to me, that's not a crime. But I do think Palantir has this cadre of people that they know are involved in drugs. Okay. They have all the profile. They know Kohberger and Kopaka are addicted to meth, and then they can bring them out and use them and dispose of them just like you would, use a Kleenex anytime they want to create what I call a mass formation psychosis, where you want to do a 9/11 or whatever and create one of these things where the reaction is problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic, whatever you want to call it. But where the thing is, we need more Palantir, right? So all these things with I had Legionnaires just recently almost died. The Legionnaires break out in Harlem. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to create massive fear in the Black community of Legionnaires, right? Or whatever. And a lot of these shootings have this same profile where there's just no information at the beginning. It's always hinted that it's, some white crazy guy. And then it leaks out that, finally 3 days later, the truth leaks out. It's a Black transgender person from Guatemala,
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is they have the cadre and the database of people that they can pull out at any time it's almost like a casting director can slot a character actor in for a narrative. And that's the danger of Palantir, because they manage both the crime side and the enforcement side. It's sort of going back to the Promise software with Robert Maxwell, and then it became Prism with NSA. If you manage both sides of the equation, if you manage the rat lines and the enforcement, you can always pick somebody out of the rat line and throw it over to law enforcement. Sort of like the old Al Capone protection days. Occasionally you throw some of the 2-bit criminals to the wolves.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually want to show you something here, George. And real quick, as a reminder, I do have a Discord and a Substack. Everything that I do, including the stream, is 100% free. The only thing that I'd ask is you support the stream by subscribing. So go to my YouTube channel, click subscribe, click more. I got the website, TikTok, Discord, Substack. I post on Mondays and Thursdays. How regularly are you writing articles, George, or where can people find you that are
every day
Okay.
on Substack, georgewebb.substack.com. It's just like it sounds, 2 B's, and then Real George Webb 1 on Twitter.
Okay. Now, come on. Now this is, I don't know why the graphics aren't loading, but this is interesting. So this is with Palantir stock, and the pre-sentence about a day or two, 48 hours before his where the actual sentencing, $149. Post sentence was 48 hours later. And then I just looked this morning, it's 177. So that's within what, a month? And year to date, they're up 101. So like you said, if you got into Palantir early and you had a nice nest egg, you're doing very well with Palantir. They just got over $1 billion in contracts with the DoD. So they're really, really, really hitting the the government sector, the black budget sectors. And I think that Palantir is not going anywhere. It's kind of like, have you ever seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street? Where where he's like, I'm not fucking leaving. That's how I feel like what Palantir's doing, dude. They're not going anywhere. And people need to be aware of it because, to your point, look at what we just experienced and witnessed in the Idaho 4 case. While I understand people might think that this case, it's open, it's shut, he said he did it, yada, yada, yada. It's important for us to realize, call out, and spread the word. The narrative was 1 billion times stronger than any evidence in this case. And I believe that we can tie it back to what you just said in regards to they got a casting database, essentially, that they can find somebody who fits a narrative they can pre-select the narrative and then back into who they want to fit that narrative that they believe their AIs and whatever else they look into as far as analytics will allow people to believe. And if they got you in your sights, you're cooked. You're fully cooked. There's nothing you're going to be able to do. I can promise you that.
That's really the fear of this whole thing, is that they can basically craft a narrative and pick people out at will and at whim. If 2000, Jesse James Bailey has a 2013 Elantra, I can easily go into the database, find out who has a 2013 Elantra, and then give me somebody who's at a different school than University of Idaho. Make it our arch rival across the state.
Yeah, so, right across the line.
This can't be about drugs at University of Idaho. It can't be about green, cashing in on the green at his greenhouse. It can't be that. Let's push it off on somebody else. Let's throw this thing over the border. And it really looks almost like they did a database search and then they cobbled together all the evidence to try to go with that foregone decision. There's nothing in this case really that relates to Brian Koberger.
Nothing.
I mean, other past him being matching a database search.
Right. And that leads me, and thank you so much, Blue Eyed Candy, for the super chat. George, so why do you think he did plead guilty to, like, outside of the very obvious, like, to save his life, he's getting railroaded by the legal system? I actually want to add my own question onto that. Do you believe that Brian Koberger pled guilty kind of out of the blue because behind closed doors, he will be protected? He will be put into, while we might say that this is corruption and that these people are stupid, and don't get me wrong, there's probably a lot of people in the court system or whatever we just watched with the Idaho 4 case, plenty of other cases that maybe they are incompetent, but they can't be blind to this. I mean, these are very experienced people between Bill Thompson and Taylor, Hippler, even Judge. Like, why did he plead guilty? And do you think there's a chance behind closed doors that Brian is in some sort of protective custody?
I do think he's in protective custody. His cell is about 4 times larger. He's got like an Al Capone cell. He's got a lot of stuff in there that you would never have. And I just think he understands that Aryan Knights aren't only on the outside to kill his parents, but Aryan Knights are on the inside and can kill him. And so what difference does it make if you plead innocent and you're awaiting trial and you're dead with a shiv? It doesn't matter. I mean, you got to look at, he's that kind of rational person. So that's why I think he pled guilty. Just fear.
I mean, I'd be fearful too. And I've asked the question on stream before, who outside of your spouse or your like immediate bloodline family would you ever take a fall for, where you're going to get put into the brand new state-of-the-art murder room that Idaho's building after switching from lethal injection to firing squad to make a spectacle for your case? I mean, that is scary as hell. Right? I mean,
and I also think there is, I think that immediate death, but I think they also want him to be the ant in the glass. They also want him to be the kid, the boy in the bubble, the kid in the crucible, that they can constantly, like you were saying, you want a birdie cam, to see if you can take it away. It's the lonely guy cam. They want to keep pumping that image into you that, hey, there's some lonely guy out there that's going to kill your kid in college. And now we need Palantir. If we'd had automatic license plate readers, we'd have caught him. If we'd had more ingestion of the cell phone information and we could do more profiling, we would have caught him. If we only had Tom Cruise in Minority Report, we would have caught him. If we only had some precogs, you know, in a water bath, we would have thought of this. And only Palantir can bring it to you. And you really should buy our stock. I mean, it just seems so contrived around Palantir.
It does. And I'm going to answer a question that a lot of people have asked me is, why would this security footage, why would the 911 call, why would any of that be manipulated? And it's like, last night on my stream, we dove into the 911 call. You hear a background conversation going on that is very sus. It sounds like there's certain people at the scene prior to when they had said this call happened. And I do wonder, is that so we're like, we need better surveillance. Look at what happens. And we're just begging, like, surveil us harder, Palantir, surveil us harder. We need this. And then they're going to be like, look, the people, they're asking for us. They're begging us to surveil them harder. We have to give it to them. And it's from a business move, it's genius. From a overstep on American rights, it is disgusting. And they're just bending you over the barrel and showing you the 50 states every time in these footnotes of these documents where they pass some sort of bill. They're going to say, oh, we're going to do it to protect you. But then I make the joke, Karen from HR buys one too many ink cartridges, and now they're tapping her cell phone and tracking her because of, you know, X, Y, and Z. They have that ability and nobody ever reads the footnotes. So I do wonder if there's the aspect of they manipulate this shit. So we're like, we need better. We can't just have Ring cameras or whatever it is. I don't know.
Yeah, this goes back 40 years in Idaho. We looked at Wayne Morris. We looked at how he was undercover, going all the way back to when he was Chicago. I was alive at Chicago. I was in Chicago during the 68.
Wow.
I was only 8 years old, but it goes back that far with the FBI developing these drug gangs. They call them informants, but for all intents and purposes, they're the drug gangs. So the FBI is actually running the drug gang under the auspices of national security. And we have to do this drug running because we're trying to get these bad guys who are trying to influence our college youth, right, with commie ideas or whatever the latest excuses. And so that's what I'm saying. The FBI is so tied in for 40 years now with Aryan Knights. And that's what we got to break, because they will then, it's like a monster that just keeps eating and needs to eat more to survive. They just keep coming up with these stories. We identified, if you look at the Sheriff Norris out of, kind of his background with Mossad and this background with, this is where Palantir comes from. Right, it comes out of Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, and it comes out of Los Angeles Police Department. It goes back to the 60s with Manson, if you want to go all the way back to Chaos and the COINTELPRO days. So that's the genesis of this stuff. And when I see the same people that did the Israeli artists, that were going around and infiltrating into DEA in the year 2000. Right, with the Israeli art students, and I see the guys like Greg Carr who did the taps on all the sheriffs with Converse and Amdocs. When I see those same people involved in the Canfield 4 shooting, it makes me think somebody died on that day that was a key witness, right? And once Koberger knew and Ann Taylor knew that key witness was dead, they said, "Well, that's our last hope." Right? That was our last straw.
It's unbelievable. And I think too, going back to the sheriff's interview, they're like, well, we don't know if he killed himself or if he was shot. And due to the fire, we had to pretty much scoop him up. So the scene is compromised. And what they're really saying is, you're never going to get the answer on this, because we're going to fall back on, well, the crime scene's compromised and yada, yada, yada. So just shut up, take our word at face value and trust us, bro. And it goes back to a national security aspect you had just mentioned. I cannot stand two phrases in the media, and it's due to the national security, or I can't talk about that. It's an ongoing investigation. I can't and if it was legitimate, you can tell. But what I'm trying to say is when people use it as a stop asking me this question, I can't stand that.
Yeah, I FOIA'd a lot of stuff in Canfield 4. I FOIA'd a lot of stuff now in Idaho 4, but especially with Decker. And, you got to tell people in the mid-month, Decker is this guy who killed all of his 3 kids under 10 years old, 3 little beautiful girls. He zip ties them and puts plastic bags overhead, ex-special forces guy. And his MO is going when he needs food to the grocery outlet or to Safeway. And you don't tell people that. Every mother who's going there with her kids to try to get food, you got to let them know that he's driving a GMC White Sierra and here's the license plate. We do that for the Amber Alerts, but we're not going to do that for moms going to get baby formula. So there was nothing that made sense. And that's why I connected to Decker, because I said, if I was a Palantir guy, I would want a Decker running around doing all these, murders and whatnot to create this mass formation psychosis. And I would want to develop out some kind of kid with autism or something that, like an Adam Lanza or a Oswald or, a Brony boy, this Wes Rowley. I would want to develop that out. And it's the same repeating pattern. And hopefully with citizen journalists like yourself and Pavarotti and myself and so forth, we can show this pattern. And I'm not trying to hurt Palantir. Palantir's kind of shit until they added it was kind of bloatware until they added their AI module recently. Right. I'm nothing against them. I just think I don't want to be controlled by these emotional yo-yos that they're spinning.
Well, and you were on Palantir before it was cool to be onto Palantir. What was it that really kind of tipped you off on them?
Well, I mean, right out of Snowden, I'm in that industry, first of all, and I knew Palantir was bloatware. And I knew that it didn't work. They had an object model. It didn't work. It didn't come up with answers. They had to, Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, if you remember, she had a little company, Chilium or whatever it was, that basically they had to go make the crime, do the crime, and then tell everybody that their software solved the crime when in actual fact they were the ones that were the perpetrators. It didn't really work. But now they got the AI modules. Now they bolted on the AI backend. It really does work. So I was familiar with Palantir being the successor to Prism, which was Snowden and the NSA and so forth, and going all the way back to the predictive crime of trying to do this with Promise software. They've been at this a long time, and I think they finally cracked the nut with Palantir AI and Gotham.
Has there been, so we're obviously talking about synchronicities between this and the Idaho 4. Are there any other cases that you've covered recently that would tie into this?
Well, Decker is the one that I keep following. It's the selective amnesia when we had a case in Devil's Den, I think in Arkansas, where there was two people murdered in the middle, again, the same kind of woodsman, outdoorsman guy. Savvy guy in the woods kind of murder, and then a guy racing off in the other direction, another kind of wacky kid with wacky hair. It's like
right.
Yeah, right, not far from where Bill Clinton. Yeah, so it just made me, I started looking in on that really pretty close.
Dude, I want to know too, if Palantir is scripting the narrative, I want to know the people that are scripting Palantir. And have you gone into the whole like JD Vance connections and all of that? I've seen that recently in the news. I don't know if you want to get into that, but I just find it very odd. People that are pushing for Palantir, they're like the strongest people in the country, arguably the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, Palantir, when somebody comes at you with $100 million and says, I want you to be vice president, it's hard to say no. I don't think JD Vance is running it. He's just saying, hey, wow, what a great partner. But if you go back into Palantir's history, it does have this kind of Mossad thread running through it, going all the way back to Bob Maxwell. And it does have Greg Carr, who's also involved in the Idaho story, with Ruby Ridge and Aryan Nation and all that stuff. And the Israeli art students and all the wiretapping of all the police chiefs and so forth. I mean, there's a real strong thread here that if you're going to run operations, if you're going to run a subversive group of people who are hooked on drugs to be your drug runners, this is the Bronfman thing. You better be the ones who's also enforcing the law. You
have to be, otherwise you got a clusterfuck on your hands.
Yeah, people are then going to try to be arresting you if you're the one running the whole show and controlling all the information. And you can always overrule the local guy. And you could say, well, I have this cluster of information over here with GPS hits, and I have these Wi-Fi hits over here and handshakes over here, and I've got this over here with DNA, and I can double the length of the DNA and only look at the half I want to look at. I'm in control, right? And so it's sort of like COVID almost. If I design the test, then I can create whatever narrative I want. And the same thing is happening with crime.
Absolutely. And you just mentioned DNA. I'm trying to pick topics that you're mentioning that are relevant to Idaho 4, but what my passion is what I deem narrative warfare. Narrative warfare and waking people up to the fact that the things that you think are conspiracies because you can't wrap your head around that tech exists, it probably existed a decade or two ago, right? It's just now becoming public facing. And back in 2009 in the New York Times article, shout out to Sherlock Romes for breaking this or putting this out onto his YouTube channel. He showed a 2009 New York Times article where out of in an Israeli journal or Israeli scientists had put out that they can take snippets if they just had a data pool of, I believe, 426 people, they could create any DNA profile conceivable with just 426 people without having the original person's DNA to match. So, George, I have 426 DNA snippets. I can make your DNA with it without even having yours. And that was in 2009. They published it in the Times. There's an entire scientific journal about it. And now you start thinking about IgG. You think about everybody that's spit into a tube to find out if they're part Viking, right? And there's millions now. They could do whatever they wanted and make whoever they want.
We looked at this in the Long Island serial killer case, which is at least 4 different finders. And again, for power brokers that live in Long Island and around the national laboratories, again, Jeff Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, and so forth. Again, not anti-Israel here at all. We did the Shoah Foundation with Peter Duke, 1,000 Stories of the Holocaust. We did the Birth of Israel, the documentary. So, I mean, we're not, I do a show with a guy called the Super Jew. So there's nothing anti-Semitic here at all. We're just trying to tell the true story of Mossad, right? And the true story of the Mossad hand in this, especially when you talk about crime solving, especially when you're talking about the rat lines. But the Mossad has come up with a way of duplicating DNA. You don't have to be there, and I can do reconstruction. And if you look at the latest Long Island serial killer case, we said that the girls were killed out in the marsh. They were let there for 18 months to decompose. Then they moved the bones. Bones were much easier to move than bodies. We said where they were. We solved the case in 2017, and now you're seeing all the now 7 years later, the confirmation come in for that. And what I'm saying is that what he's being convicted on is what you're talking about, which is random selection. It's not taking known markers, right, which were in the CODIS. Maybe CODIS had 10 markers or 20 markers or something like that, which is fixed markers, right? You're saying any random association of any group. If you take, for instance, 50 people in a room and do this in any classroom and say, who shares a birthday, right? There's a very good chance 50 people in the room will share a birthday, even though there's 365 days in a year. And you can win money this way, but it's because of the random association. The reason why we need to stick to the markers, right, is because then you can't play random association games. The reason why you can do that with 426 is because you're picking snippets and pieces out of that, depending on what the mix is from the random association. So it's just like the birthday game. It's the same exact thing. And it's what they want to convict the new Long Island serial killer, the 4th finder in the series. And it's, again, it's sleight of hand, and we got to call that out.
Yep. That's actually a case that I have a guest on every Monday evening, Devil's Advocates. And that's a case that we're going to be going into. He's predicting that that's going to be huge next year. And ultimately, what I'm taking away from what I mentioned about the 2009 study and what you just said is they can manufacture a crime scene. They can manufacture a suspect. They can manufacture anything that they want. And I am curious, and I'll ask you actually rather than state it, at what point in our court system does DNA kind of start to get looked at like almost a lie detector test, where it's going to become known that it can be fabricated and it can be faked? Like right now, it'll still double in size, but let's not be naive and think that they won't be able to figure out a way to not be able to tell, right? do you think that DNA will ever not be the gold standard in a court system anymore? If it's already not, especially trace DNA.
Yeah, touch DNA and so forth. Well, one instance is it's not so much DNA not being, but it's corroborating DNA, cross-referencing DNA. If you stab somebody 50 times, you're going to have 50 blood spatters of that DNA.
Right.
If you stab somebody 30 times, you're going to have 30. So if I see 80 instances and I see 80 pictures and I see 80 different samples run, I'm pretty confident that's good DNA, even 5. But when I only see 1, that to me says, oh, this guy goes into his place and gets a little bit of DNA off his razor or something, and then
Or a Q-tip.
or Q-tip and swabs it on the knife, and now I'm done.
Right.
If there's really 100 stab wounds, and I used Pavarotti's brain hematomas here to show the second weapon, then you got to the evidence has to fit the crime. So that's what I'm saying there.
Blue Eye Candy has a question as well again. And just so everybody knows, when George is mentioning the Long Island serial killer, that's kind of the newer name for what was previously known as the Gilgo Beach. So that's what LISK means. But do you think it's a ring, George? I know there's a lot of speculation on the cops and some other people that are very, powerful involved. Do you think it's a ring?
There's no question it's a ring. I wasn't going to work that case. I was going through New York. A friend of Shannon Gilbert, who had known Shannon Gilbert and danced with Shannon Gilbert, they were not prostitutes, they were dancers, had danced with her and said, please help me on this case. My friend was murdered. All these other friends of mine have been murdered. You got to help me on this case. I would not have been involved in that case so closely, but the Suffolk County people were so far into being the people that were going to do the little meetings, for all the Wall Street people that were coming out there on the weekends. There was a very heavy connection. There's an Epstein connection. I wrote a couple books on it where they had a weekly thing at the Stone Fortress where they were compromising people mainly at the UN and then inviting them out on the weekends for these long weekends on Long Island. So it's out there on my Substack, georgewebb.substack.com. That's all I can say for right now because I know we're running out of time and I have to go at the top of the hour. So
no, you're good, man. I do want to say one thing quick, and it is Sarah Sushi had asked a question. I try to ask the questions, especially when people are kind enough to give a super chat. Do you think that people like Brian ever get to hear that he has people digging deeper to find out the truth? Are his parents allowed, to visit him? She said, sorry for asking such an obvious question, but I do think it's important to realize that although Brian took a plea deal with certain terms, right? In his case, it's Garza v. Idaho that he can lean on. But as far as access to the outside world and seeing and monitoring what people are looking into, do you know if prisoners will get access to the open internet in that type of environment that he's in?
I don't think it's normal. If it's not federal prison, state prison is not normal. But I do think he asked for it, and I don't have confirmation of that. I think that's one of the key things he asked for was internet access. So let's see if that's true or not. That's a rumor that I've collected in my gumshoeing around Coeur d'Alene. So let's see if that's true.
I love that. And just real quick, George, before we end here, I want to make an announcement. I usually do the Hive Mind Roundtable, which is 3 members from the Hive on the last Sunday of the month. However, with Labor Day weekend coming up, I'm doing it next Sunday, August 24th. Email me, birdiebombshell00@gmail.com. Put roundtable in the subject line. Tell me the topic that you'd like to discuss. I always look forward to those Hive Mind Roundtables to hear from you all and get your thoughts and opinions on the Idaho 4, on a conspiracy, on what George and I just dove into today. And with that, George, I just want to say it was an honor to have you into the Hive. Thank you so much for the time. Good luck. And I would love to have you back on in a handful of weeks. And as this case progresses and as the LISK case progresses, I will be diving into that too. So it'd be fun to collab and connect again on that.
Yes, thanks very much. And people don't realize this is not for the faint of heart. They know where we are, and so we're putting ourselves out there. And Bertie, you're a very gutsy guy. I want to say the same thing for Pav as well. And I really appreciate you because if there's nobody who stands up, there's nobody there for you when you get in trouble and they decide you're the guy that they want to frame. So I really appreciate your courage on this.
Yeah, thank you, George. I appreciate that. Hive, and to everybody that is cross I guess cross streaming. We're not crossing streams, but we're everybody that's on George's connected platforms. Thank you so much for tuning into the Hive Mind. I go live every weeknight at 7 p.m. Central. And with that, Hive, I hope everybody has a wonderful Saturday. I will be back on tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Central. Thanks, George. Cheers, brother.
Thanks, Birdie.
Yep. See you.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.